What is the origin of everything? Is there a God, or is the universe eternal, or is it something else entirely? Welcome to the Seeker's Tavern. In this video we can explore this topic by answering the following questions. Who can find the truth? How many times can I ask why? Is there an origin to everything? How many origins are there? And what is the origin made of? This tavern is a welcome place for all seekers of truth, so grab a pint and feel free to comment on any of the points I make. Who can find the truth? The most important part of finding the truth is actually just being very curious. Most people don't realize this, but the truth doesn't find itself. Yes, the truth is objective, it's complete, but it's out there, not in here. In order to get it into your head, you have to first want to do that, dedicate some time to it and actually do a fair amount of work. Here is the reason why it's so important. It doesn't matter where you are or what you're doing, look at anything, like the weather, and ask yourself, what caused it? Why is it sunny? Well, it's because there are no clouds. What caused the clouds to go away? The wind. What caused the wind? And so on. Soon enough you will notice a pattern, that there is a chain of cause and effect, and if you're curious enough, another type of question will pop into your head. How long is this chain? How many more times can I ask the question, what caused it? Can I ask this question for infinity? Or is there some point where it stops and there is no further answer? Well, let me jump the gun and say that who many people call God is a first cause that has no cause before it. Now just hold on a second. I know that it's not that simple, but you can see why an intense desire to know the truth is necessary to get to this step. It doesn't matter what your interests are, it doesn't matter where you start. If you really want to know the truth and just keep asking questions, you will always get to this same point. Is there a beginning? As Jesus said, seek and you shall find. Isn't it interesting that every child is like this? Endlessly curious and constantly asking questions. Anyone can do this. In fact, this is a conclusion I came to independently when I was in my teens. I wasn't even aware of the fact that it's a popular argument for God. However, if you're a skeptic, you might say, hold on a second. Just because there is a first cause doesn't mean it's God. And this criticism is so right and so wrong at the same time. Let me first explain why there must be a first cause, and then I will tell you about what is so right and wrong about that answer. How many times can I ask why? This is a very common pattern actually. It's not just with causation, it occurs with many other questions as well. Let's look at a couple of them and see what they all have in common. What is this computer made of? And what is that made of? And what is that made of? Is there a smallest indivisible element? Or is there an infinite regress of composition? How do I know my friend is going to be late? And how do I know that? And how do I know that? Is there a truth that is self-evidently true? Or is there an infinite regress of justification? Why do I want to work? And why do I want to do that? And why do I want to do that? Is there a first reason for why I'm doing something? Or is there an infinite regress of reasons? So we have causation, composition, justification, and reason. There are probably many other such examples. In fact, I don't think I can think of any line of questioning that doesn't have an infinite regress problem. If you can think of something, let me know in the comments. Even though there are many such problems, they all have something in common: dependency. And this is key to figuring out if there is an end to this line of questioning. The cloud moving is dependent on the wind. If there was no wind, the cloud wouldn't move. The computer is dependent on the parts it's composed of. If those parts wouldn't exist, neither would the computer. Me knowing that my friend is going to be late is dependent on his text message. If I didn't know about the text message, I wouldn't know he would be late. Me wanting to work is dependent on making money. If a job didn't make money, I wouldn't want to do it. Or simply put, B is dependent on A, so if A doesn't happen, B won't happen either. And here is the main problem. We can't have an infinite chain of things dependent on each other, because anything that is dependent on something else doesn't exist by itself but because of whatever came before it. If there is an infinite amount of such things, then nothing exists by itself, or simply put, nothing exists. I think a good illustration of why this happens is using the idea of mathematical functions. A typical mathematical function has an input, function, and an output. No input, no output. Pretty basic, right? Well, what if the input to this function was another function, and the input to that function was another function, and so on for infinity? Then all you would have is an infinite amount of functions and zero actual inputs. It doesn't matter if it's a single function or an infinite chain of them, no input, no output. Functions without an input can't do anything. In fact, since we are on the topic of mathematics, you should check out Gödel's incompleteness theorem, specifically the second theorem, which has mathematical proof that there are fundamental axioms of mathematics upon which all proofs depend on that cannot be proven themselves. In other words, mathematical proofs cannot regress infinitely, and there is a mathematical proof of that. So in short, the answer is that there is a limit to how many times I can ask why. Is there an origin to everything? So here comes the biggest question. Where did everything come from? Since everything that is here depends on something that came before, the only logical conclusion is that it cannot regress infinitely. And therefore, there is an ultimate source of all creation, the first cause. Because a function needs an input to have an output, since everything that exists is an output, we know that there must be an actual input. This first cause is unlike the other causes because they are dependent on something else. The first cause, by definition, is not dependent on anything. Is the grounding for all reality that allows everything to exist. Is the reason why there is something rather than nothing. As I was saying this, I could already hear the skeptics saying, but it doesn't prove that this source is God. How do you know that it's only a first cause and not many? Wouldn't that defeat your idea of the one true God? How do you know that this first cause is not made of stuff? And now I will tell you why this is so right and so wrong at the same time. Yes, this is correct. Nothing in any of the explanations I just gave suggests that this is a loving personal God that people can pray to, nor does it prove that there is one or what it's made of. So what? You just heard that there must be a first cause of all creation, and the first thing you go to is critique? Where's your curiosity? One of the biggest questions in modern science is what is the origin of life on Earth? Evolution may be proven, but no one knows how life originated. Wouldn't you be excited to find out what the origin of life was? Well, how much more excited should you be to find out what the origin of everything was? If I was you, I would be endlessly curious with the first cause, even if it wasn't God. I would ask a whole bunch of questions and try to understand it as much as I could, as investigating the source of everything would be one of the highest priorities, if not the highest priority, for anyone that is an actual truth seeker. If instead you get defensive and start criticizing rather than exploring, what that tells me is that you are trying to defend a worldview you have rather than trying to seek the truth. That's why subjectivity is so crucial to all of this. If you don't have your desires lined up properly, even if you are correct in your criticism, you can get stuck and not actually progress. To illustrate this further, imagine this scenario. I tell you that there is a room beyond this door. You close your eyes, open the door, walk in, and say that you see no evidence of any room, and then you pat yourself on the back because you are, of course, technically correct. You don't see any evidence of the room, but you don't attempt to either. The first cause at least has some properties that align with the idea of God. It is self-sufficient and created everything. Not attempting to investigate further is the equivalent of walking into a room with your eyes closed. Now, it would be very hypocritical of me to criticize the critics without doing any further investigation myself. So that is exactly what I will do, and what any truth seeker should do: seek the truth. How many origins are there, and what are they made of? To start this investigation, let's assume that there are two origins and see if we can run into any logical inconsistencies. For there to be two origins, they have to be different in some way. Even if they are essentially the same thing, they would have to at least occupy different places. There has to be a difference, otherwise there would be no reason to say that there is more than one. Now, if there is a difference between them, they have to be limited in some way. The first is lacking something that the second has, and vice versa. It's necessary to be limited to be different. This, however, is a big problem. Can a lack of something exist as a first cause? Can a shadow, which is a lack of light, exist without light? The idea is absurd. Me being limited in space and time suggests that space and time must exist before me. If such things didn't exist prior to me, then that sentence would just be gibberish. However, nothing can exist before the first cause. Therefore, the first cause cannot be limited in any way. It must be perfect. If the first cause has no limitation, it cannot be different, and if it cannot be different, it has to be single. But what is this first cause made of? Can it be a composite of things? I was looking for the most succinct explanation, and so I asked on Reddit, and here it is. Every composite thing is posterior to its component parts and dependent on them. The first cause is first and not dependent, therefore not composite, but simple. Anything that is composed of parts is dependent on them, but a first cause cannot be dependent on anything by definition, therefore the first cause must be simple. There we go. As you can see, using some clever logical reasoning, it is possible to find out more things about the first cause. In summary, everybody who actively seeks the truth will find it. Every chain of dependent things must have a beginning, and there is an origin to everything that is both single and simple. Do you think it's possible to prove whether the first cause is personal or loving? How far do you think we can go with exploring the first cause? Let me know in the comments.